A photo started spreading online that had the entire NBA world buzzing, the so-called craziest transformation in league history. The picture claimed to show Evan Mobley, the Cavaliers' young defensive anchor, going from a lanky Kevin Durant build to a Giannis Antetokounmpo-type monster in just one off-season. It looked so real that blogs, podcasts, and even major outlets picked it up. The Athletic did a whole segment about it, with some analysts even joking that Mobley should be drug-tested. That's how believable it was. But here's the truth, the photo was fake. Completely fabricated. No wild weight room jump. No secret Giannis-style mutation. The real Mobley? He's chilling on vacation with friends in Turks and Caicos, looking very much like the same player we've known the last few years. The picture was so convincing, though, that it fooled not just fans but respected media outlets. And that's the danger of the NBA offseason. People are so desperate for content that fake news spreads like wildfire. Now, the disappointment here runs deeper because Cleveland fans briefly let themselves imagine what a Giannis-level Evan Mobley could mean. Last season, the Cavaliers won 64 games, second only to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and looked like true contenders. But the playoffs told a completely different story. They got embarrassed by the Indiana Pacers, bounced out in just 5 games, including that historic Game 4 where they trailed by 41 points at halftime, the biggest playoff deficit in league history. From a dominant 1 seed to being exposed under the bright lights, the Cavs season ended in disaster. So, the big question is, were the Cavaliers frauds, or was that collapse just part of a growing process? This year will be their test. And with Lonzo Ball now added to the mix, things get even more interesting. Lonzo hasn't stepped on an NBA floor in years, but is desperate to prove he can still run an offense, defend at a high level, and silence the critics. Sharing point guard duties in Cleveland gives him that chance. If Lonzo can stay healthy, and that's always the big if, his vision and defense could be exactly what this Cavs team was missing in the postseason. But before we look too far ahead, let's step back and talk about real NBA transformations, the kind that actually happened. Because history has given us some shocking ones. Take Mark Gasol, for example. When he first entered the NBA draft conversation, scouts laughed at his body. The Rockets staff even gave him a cruel nickname, Man Boobs. They couldn't see past his heavy frame, and as a result, they let him slip to the Memphis Grizzlies with the 48th pick. Big mistake. Within a few years, that same out-of-shape Gasol transformed his body, sharpened his skills, and turned into a dominant two-way center. He became an all-star, an NBA champion, and one of the smartest big men of his generation. The Rockets let jokes cloud their vision, and it cost them big. Then, of course, there's Nikola Jokic. Remember those old pictures of him as a kid, chubby, soft, almost unrecognizable as the player we see today? People doubted he had the body or the conditioning to dominate the NBA. But then came the pandemic years. Out of nowhere, Jokic showed up looking slimmer, more mobile, and with a completely new level of stamina. That body change unlocked his peak. What followed was 2 MVPs, a Finals MVP, and the championship Denver had been waiting decades for. And that's the key difference when we talk about transformations. Almost all of them in NBA history come from fat loss, not massive muscle gain. Losing weight is possible. Improving conditioning is possible. That's what happened with Jokic, Gasol, even guys like James Harden or Luka Doncic in certain off-seasons when they slimmed down. But going from skinny like Mobley to a jacked, muscle-bound force like Giannis in one off-season? That's not happening. That's why the fake photo was so shocking, because deep down, fans know it's impossible, but the idea was too exciting not to believe for a moment. So, while Evan Mobley hasn't turned into Giannis overnight, his real transformation still matters. The Cavs need him to step into that next-level role, the guy who doesn't just look the part, but plays the part when it counts in May and June. And this season will reveal whether Cleveland's fake news reputation ends with that Photoshop picture, or with another early playoff exit. It's impossible to make a transformation like that fake Evan Mobley picture in just one off-season. That's why the best muscle gain story ever will always belong to Giannis Antetokounmpo. It took him 4 full years to go from a skinny toothpick to a Greek god. And that's what made the Mobley picture so exciting, because if his next leap is real, it has to be Giannis level. Here's why. Last season, Mobley made what might have been the most underrated leap in the entire NBA. In just his 4th year, he racked up Defensive Player of the Year, his first All-Star selection, All-NBA, and All-Defense honors while even picking up MVP votes. He went from having none of those accolades to suddenly having all of them in a single year. That's like jumping from a top 50 player to top 15. And if you know basketball, you know how hard that is. But here's the real challenge. the next leap into the top 10 is even tougher. Why? Because you have to pass some of the best players on the planet. According to the Ringers rankings, Mobley is sitting in that 15-ish range with Cade Cunningham, but to move up, he'd need to leapfrog legends and stars like Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Victor Wembanyama, and Jason Tatum. That's no easy list to crack. Either Mobley skyrockets, or some of those guys have to fall off dramatically. And that's exactly why the idea of his body transforming like that photo had people so hyped. It made the dream of Mobley becoming the next true superstar feel real. But even without the Photoshop, is there a chance he does it anyway? The numbers say yes. Now, let's go back to last season. Cleveland won 64 games, claimed the 1 seed, and destroyed the Miami Heat in the first round. None of those games were close, it was pure domination. But the second round flipped the script. Injuries hit hard. Darius Garland was banged up. Mobley himself was nursing pain. Donovan Mitchell was slowed down. That's your 3 best players all limping through the series. And the Indiana Pacers took full advantage. Tyrese Haliburton was on fire, hitting clutch stepbacks in Game 2, while Indiana's defense locked Cleveland to just 30% shooting from deep. In 5 games, the Cavs' magical season was over. But here's the twist, this coming year, the East looks weaker than ever. The Pacers? Not the same team. They lost their best player to injury and sent Miles Turner to the Bucks. The Celtics? Their star is out too. Suddenly, the path is wide open. Who's Cleveland's real competition for the 1 seed? The Knicks. And no offense, they're tough, but they're not exactly the KD Warriors. And the Cavs have one more hidden weapon. Hoops Hype calculated projected wins by opponent when the schedule dropped. A score of 100 is league average. Cleveland? They have the easiest schedule in the entire NBA. Only 1 month all season is projected as league average difficulty or higher. Everything else is a cakewalk. That's partly the benefit of playing in the East, but it's also a gift for a team trying to prove it belongs among the NBA's elite. So, while the fake photo was fun, the real Evan Mobley story is even bigger. If he takes that next leap, from top 15 to true top 10, the Cavs might not just reclaim the 1 seed. They might finally be ready for a real run at the finals. The Western Conference is about to get wild, and one team you need to keep an eye on is the New Orleans Pelicans. Their schedule looks brutal, with 5 of the first 7 months ranked over 100 in difficulty. Translation? They could get off to a nightmare start. And if that happens, don't be surprised if the front office starts looking at major changes, maybe even moving Zion Williamson before Christmas. Yeah, it's that serious. But while the Pelicans might be staring down chaos, the Cleveland Cavaliers have a different challenge on their hands. If they want to make noise in the playoffs, they'll need Evan Mobley to finally take that next leap. Now, we all remember the viral photo that had people talking about his body transformation, but let's be real, most of that was fake hype. The real transformation Mobley needs is on the offensive end. Defensively, he's already elite, his 1 defensive player of the year. But what's holding him back is his ability to create for himself. Last season, we saw flashes of something special. Mobley became way more aggressive at the rim and even stretched his game to the 3-point line. Before December 5th, he was struggling from deep, barely hitting a shot a game at poor efficiency. But then something clicked. In back-to-back games against Denver and the next opponent, he went 9-for-13 from 3. From that point on, he shot 38% for the rest of the season. If he can keep that up, that's already scary. But here's the real key, ball handling. Right now, Mobley still relies too much on Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell to create his looks. If he can tighten his handle, get into his shot quicker, and generate offense on his own, we might see him take that Johnny's leap everyone's been waiting for. And no, he doesn't need to bulk up to do it. Just look at Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper himself. His proof that skill, not just muscle, makes you unstoppable. Speaking of Durant, his situation in Houston is getting interesting. Everyone assumed the Rockets would lock him up with a max extension immediately after the trade. But here we are, still no deal. That silence is loud. KD has never been shy about speaking his mind, and if Houston hesitates too long, things could get messy. A hungry young team and a superstar who wants his money? That's a storm waiting to hit.